Hi guys, thank you for watching my YouTube channel. I'm Arving Gonzalez, and in this opportunity, we're gonna make a recap about the LIDOM Draft, which was last week, where the 16th drafted 96 players for about 16 rounds. Let's get into it real quick. We're gonna be using a website from my very good friend Angel Matos, Bengaleses.com. Is like the best lead on website. It's been uh, with us like since 2003, so 19 years. That website have provided like great insights and really updated information about the league. It was a season, I think it was 2012, where Lidom hired Angel Matos to be like the webmaster from Lidom.com. And basically what he did was turning Bengaleses.com, which is the page I'm showing you right now, for those who can watch the YouTube channel. For those who are listening to the podcast version of this, you can go to bengaleses.com. Is like Spanish from it's like Spanish translation for Bengals. So bengaleses.com, and you're gonna find great information there. And let's begin talking about the Toros. The Toros drafted Adael Amador with the first overall pick, and there's a lot of things to say about him, but if you listened to the previous episode, you already have a really good idea about Amador, the one of the best prospects from the Rocky organizations, Colorado Rockies organizations. He's currently playing the playoffs, and is in the first series. He's playing high A right now. Amador, that was the kind of players that Raymond Abreu, which is the general manager for the Toros del Este, that's the player he was looking for, he said, because he's a really good defender. He makes a lot of good contact and have a really good play discipline, have a high OBP this season, and also he's a really good base runner. So that's the kind of players that the Toros have been drafted in the last couple of years, like Vidar Brujan, who plays for the Rays. A long time ago, like 10 years ago, it was Jorge Mateo, Manuel Margot, Christian Adames, a bunch of players that have a good play discipline, who can run and who knows how to run bases, and also players with a good hitting tool. So the rest of the players that the Toros drafted were Jonathan Glaser, outfielder from the Seattle Mariners, Juan Brito, and Manuel Peña, also Adrian Plasencia and Willie Vasquez. Those four are infielders from the Rockies, D-backs, Angels, and Willie Vasquez from the Rays. Then, in the 7th and 8th round, they drafted two pitchers, Antonio Jimenez from the Rays in the 7th, and in the 8th, Franklin Sanchez for the Mets. And in general, they drafted like 5 pitchers and 11 position players. And Toros has been a very good thing in terms of pitching in the last couple of seasons. They didn't make it to the playoffs last year, and they were in the last place. But before that, they went to the semifinals in 2021, and in 2020 they won the championship. It's a team that is really stacked in terms of native players, and they have done really nice transactions in the last couple of years in terms of foreign players Like I'm talking about Paulo Espino, who's pitching now with the Nationals. Also Jorge Ruiz, who has been pitching the majors shortly. Also Peter O'Brien, who played with the D-backs a couple of years ago. And yeah, it's a team who plays like really good defense and nice pitching staff and key contribution in offensive start from uh, some players. It's not the biggest offensive team on the league, but they make enough runs to win the baseball games. And also, it's a team who, if all the major leaguers who are going to play in the World Baseball Classic are going to play in the Dominican Winter League this season, Toros is one of the things who are going to be like really, really good. I'm talking about Manny Machado, Sarah Ramirez, Gary Sanchez, Miguel Andujar, to mention some of them. So, yeah, the Toros, they have drafted like the same mindset they have had in the last couple of seasons. So it makes sense a bunch of the picks they drafted. And the second pick was Leones del Escogido, who drafted Warming Bernabel, who is also from the Rockies, who plays second baseman and the third base. And one thing about Bernabel is that he's ready to play since the beginning of the LIDOM season. That's when the director of baseball operations, Trello Pimentel, told in the draft when he was interviewed that they have the permit for him to play. And for Leones, they took a bunch of position players, just like the Toros. They only drafted 5 pitchers, same than the Toros, and they pick 15 players instead of 16 because they traded one pick to Gigantes in a previous transaction in the offseason. And yeah, Bernabel is a player that I don't know if he's really to impact right now in LIDOM level. That's a little bit high for him. He's been playing high A and single A, and LIDOM level is more like double A, triple A. Let's see how it goes. Also, they got Edison Paulino in the second pick, who is a shortstop who was moved to the second baseman for the Red Sox because they have Marcelo Mayer playing the shortstop, one of the best prospects right now the Red Sox have, and that's why. Also, Jose Torres, an infielder for the from the Cincinnati Reds. Joshua Baez, I was surprised they got it that late, that it wasn't drafted before. Maybe because he's a Dominican, but who was born in the USA. So maybe that's something the teams were like cautious before drafting him, because there's not like any kind of warrant that he's gonna like playing in LIDOM. I don't know if anything have made close contact with him, so that's something to keep in mind. And also they drafted a couple of outfielders from the Mets, Anthony Garcia and Omar de los Santos in round 5. And for Escogido, they picked 16 players now that I see, because they drafted twice in the 5th round, and in those 2 outfielders, you have to be like that. It makes sense to think that it was Luis Rojas, former Mets manager, who is now the general manager for the Escogido, and those 2 players, Anthony Garcia and Lisandro Santos from Omar de los Santos, from the Mets. That's probably something that Rojas was looking at them when they drafted, so he had a better insight that any other employee for another front office of the other five teams. Christian Santana, they got it on the eighth round, really good infielder for the Detroit Tigers organization. He's still pretty young, just 18, 19 years old. That's a good pick to look forward, how he develops. And Fraude Bautista, that, in my opinion, was the best catching that was available, the best catcher that was available in the draft. They got in the 10th pick, and they got a bunch of, like, let's say, not that young pitchers like Juan Mercedes, Daniel Libero, Juan Carlos Mendez, and Luis Adiel Guerrero. So they got 4 pitchers in the last 5 rounds. And what Escogido has done in the last couple of seasons has been like drafting pitchers that are under the radar, that are not top prospect, and that are like all enough, like 22, 23 years old to pitch in LIDOM. So I'm looking forward to see, especially Juan Mercedes, who is someone who I have talked about in previous episode with John Tropin from Baseball Prospectus. So let's keep an eye on him, also Fraude Batista. Those are some players that can impact the team in the upcoming season. And let's see how Warren Barnaber, like, I don't know how good he does or not in first season. So let's move to the other team. Águilas Cibaeñas. Águilas drafted Manuel Rodriguez, who is the third prospect right now, number 3 prospect in the rankings from the Minnesota Twins. He's an outfielder who couldn't play that much this season. He had an injury in one of his hand in June, but he was having pretty good numbers before that. And something important is that Angelo Valles, who is the general manager for the Águilas, told that the Águilas medical team was like making some research about Rodriguez injury, and they think that it's not something that serious. So I don't know if he will be able to play in the upcoming season. He's just 19 years old, but he's a really good player. He's in the top 100 prospect for MLB Pipeline. He's the number 97, and he playing in Double A, in Single A, I mean, this season with 9 homers, 3 triples, and 5 doubles, and 25 RBIs and 35 runs in just 136 at bats. So that's about 47 games, and that's really good, like huge. That's why he had a 551 slugging. And rest of the picks, they got Juan Guerrero, again another prospect from the Rockies, Frederick Van Cosmes, who plays with the Orioles in Aberdeen in High A. Also Daniel Antonio Matea, who is an outfielder for the Rangers, Albert Fabian, an infielder for the Padres, Jose Ferrer, who pitched with Fredericksburg here in Virginia. He belongs to the Washington organization, Washington Nationals, and he was also pitching in High A Wilmington and also in Double A Harrisburg, and that's a really good pick for them. And if you see most of the picks, that's something you can see right now, but like Águilas pick top talent, but also top talent who are from the north region of the Dominican Republic, which is the region where the Águilas plays. And more of these prospects who are from there are Águilas fans. That's something that was on the table, like a priority for them. Like, I'm not saying that they only picked them because of where they are coming from, where they live there, but also because between players who have the same level of talent, they rather get the ones who are for the region. So that's something that happens usually. And the Águilas drafted a bunch of pitchers. They drafted 9 pitchers and 7 position players, 3 outfielders and 3 infielders. And some fans were arguing in social media and complaining because they didn't get a catcher, and they always complain about Francisco Peña and David Grullón, has been the main 2 catchers for the organization in the last decade, and especially Peña, who is more veteran. And they always have to be hiring foreigners, foreign catchers. And yeah, but after in the free agency, they got a couple of catchers who weren't drafted, because that's what happens with the LIDOM draft. If a player is not drafted in two drafts in LIDOM, the player becomes free agent, can sign with any organization. So let's move to Licey. Tigres del Licey drafted in the 4th term, and they got Kevin Alcantara in the 1st round, which is the 3rd best prospect from the Chicago Cubs, and he was the main piece in the Anthony Rizzo trade. He was signing originally for the Yankees, and he was part of the prospect package that the Yankees sent to the Cubs on 2021 on the summer to get Anthony Rizzo, and he had a really good season in low A with the Minor Beach Pelicans in this season in the Carolina League. And he's a Licey fan. Like, the Tigres del Licey organization met him since he was like so young, like 12, 13 years old, because he used to play also in the little leagues like that Licey had. His parents are like ticket season holders for Licey games, and he used to go there. So that was a dream come true for the Alcantara family, and that's something that can influence in the future. A player who is fan from a team in LIDOM can like make a bigger effort talking with his organization in order to play in LIDOM. So they got Luis Mieses in the 2nd round, who plays for the Chicago White Sox, and he had a really good season. He was playing in Double-A, which the Double-A season ended yesterday, and he had a huge year. Carlos Vargas, who was promoted to the big leagues last weekend for the Cleveland Guardians, and has a really good slider. I was looking at the scouting report on Fangraphs that good friend Jordan from Cespedes Barbecue sent me when we were making the last live video, the last episode before this of the LIDOM Report podcast. So yeah, Christian Menas, who was the 2nd best pitching talent available in the draft, only behind Ricky Tiedemann, that Licey also got in the 6th round. And Axel Sanchez, who plays for the Mariners, he's really good. Like, he had that blast, that power in his bat. He makes a lot of good contact. He's a really good defender, great hands, and he's still too young. But like the first, I would say, 6 picks of the Tigres del Licey, I think they got the best talent, and also taking into account they were 4 in order in the draft. So that's really good news for Licey fans. They also got a bunch of pitchers later on. Like Licey drafted in total 10 pitchers and 6 position players. And yeah, that's something that have Licey's weaknesses in the last couple of seasons. Like, his pitching staff has been so let's say, inconsistent. Also, the offensive has been the main issue, but also there have been a couple of stretch where the pitching has been so bad. And the next thing is the Estrellas Orientales, who was number 5 in order. They drafted local kid from San Pedro de Macorís, that's the province where the Estrellas plays, Wilfred Veras, who is son of former major leaguer Wilton Veras, and also nephew of Fernando Tatis Sr. and thus cousin of Fernando Tatis Jr. And he's a really good player. He's in the top 20 for the White Sox. He was more like drafted in that with that pick, the 5th pick overall, because of the situation that he's from San Pedro de Macorís, and also he's a fan he's a Estrellas fan, so he really wants to play for the team. So that make it easier for the front office, led by general manager of Estrellas Orientales, Felix Peguero, and also Estrellas got Cameron Robinson on the 2nd round, which is a veteran pitcher, like 23 years old. He pitched for the Milwaukee Brewers organization, and he's in the top 30 prospect rankings. I think it's number 27. And it's a pitcher who can impact in the beginning in the upcoming season for the Estrellas. Jeremy De La Rosa, which was named by Baseball America the minor league player of the season for the Washington Nationals organization. He was first on single A, high A, and he finished the season in double A. And he put really big numbers, especially in the first 4 months of the season, or 3 months, like April, May, June. He was one of the top offensive players in terms of production for the Nationals. And also, Estrellas also draft a bunch of pitchers, like every draft. And this draft was not the exception. They got 10 pitchers, and that was like the main research for teams in this class. Like there weren't like a lot of good position players, like top talent, top prospects, and there was more like top pitching prospect or middle pitcher prospect than the opposite with position player. And that's why, even though the teams drafted 46 pitchers and 46 position players, like the pitchers that they drafted, the 46 pitchers in general had more impact and more talent than the position players. That's why. So last thing, Gigantes, they drafted Davison de los Santos with the first pick, who, in my opinion, is the best hitter. Like the hitter who is more ready to play in LIDOM in the upcoming season. He had a really huge year this season with the D-backs. He was playing high A and single A, and he's still young. I think he haven't turned 20 years old yet. And also, Gigantes manager is Luis Urrueta, which is also the manager from the Colombian national team for the World Baseball Classic. And Urrueta works in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization, and that also is something they considered when he drafted. And they hope, like Jesus Mejia, the general manager for Gigantes del Cibao, told that they are expecting him to play this season with Gigantes. And Julio Carreras, which is a really talented shortstop, again from the Colorado Rockies. A bunch of top prospects for the Rockies were drafted in this class. And also they got Henry Mendez, which is an outfielder for the Brewers, 45-50 overall player in the 2080 scouting grades. And they got again, a lot of pitchers. They got in general 8 pitchers. I think Escogido, Toros, and Gigantes were the less, and the teams that less pitchers got. And yeah, and Águilas, Liceis, and Estrella were the teams that more pitchers drafted. So Gigantes drafted, think 8 pitchers. Yes, 8 pitchers and 8 position players. They also got released Devers, which is a very good pitcher from the Cubs. Christian Montes de Oca from Arizona, also, and Emiliano Teodov, a pitcher from the Texas Rangers, and Pablo Aldoni, which I something I'm familiar with. He pitched for the Nationals organization this season in Fredericksburg and also in Wilmington, the high A. And yeah, they got, taking into account they were the last team drafting in order, they could get some good talent. Especially, I'm surprised they got like really good players in terms of position players in the first 3 rounds, like Julio Carrera, Sandro Mendez, and Davison Dos Santos are really good offensive players, and that's huge for the front office for Gigantes del Cibao. And in general, I think that again, it makes sense that Toros made a really good draft because they were the first thing, and it has to be like a really bad draft for a first in order thing picking to be like to not be the best thing drafting. And you can also think this way. There are teams that draft the best talent, but not necessarily those players can play in LIDOM because there are top prospects. The MLB teams are more cautious with them and don't allow them to play in LIDOM. And you can also think of a team who drafts players who have realistic chances of playing in LIDOM. And I think that's the case for Escogido. I think Escogido have a bunch of players who can play this year, next year. If they are not ready to play this year, they don't have those kind of restriction with most of their players, I can tell. And like the 2 players or 3 players you can say could have restriction as Warming Bernabeu, Edison Paulino, and Joshua Baez, but we already know that Bernabeu is going to play, and let's see what happens with Baez and Edison Paulino. But still, they are too young. They're still too young. Let's wait. And the opposite is Tigres del Licey. Tigres del Licey drafted arguably like the best talent, like Kevin Alcantara, Carlos Vargas, Luis Mieses, Christian Mena, Arthur Sanchez, Ricky Tiedemann. Like, especially those 6 players are the best of the draft. But I'm not sure of how many of them are going to play because, again, they are top prospects. Maybe Alcantara could play because of he's a Licey fan, and I don't know, maybe that could influence. But I'm not sure about Mieses or Christian Mena or Carlos Vargas. I'm not sure about Ricky Tiedemann either. Axel Sanchez, he will probably play because Auto Vicente, which is the general manager for Tigres del Licey, works for the Mariners organization, so that can make it easier. And then are teams that have like a mix or top prospect like Águilas with, especially with Manuel Rodriguez and Juan Guerrero. And Guerrero is not even in the top 5 prospect, frankly, for the Rockies. So Águilas make a really good draft. Like, they drafted key position players that can support the team, can can add value to the team in the upcoming seasons, and also a bunch of pitchers, which is also a good resource in Lidon. In Lidon, you never have enough pitchers because there are restrictions for the players. A Major League Baseball team can stop one player on any given day without notice, without previous notice. I mean, and yeah, that's really important. I also like. I already talked about Toros, but I really like what the Gigantes make, being the last team drafting. I think maybe that like was above their expectation, the front office expectation, because of the really good position players they got, and they also got a couple of really good arms that can pitch in Lidom that won't have restrictions, and that's why I'm very like cautious with Licey, with what Licey did. They drafted very good players, top talent, but I'm not sure. Time will tell. Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I see it. And also, Estrellas, they like draft a couple of interesting players, like beyond like Veras and Robinson. I'm looking forward to see how Jeremy De La Rosa develops. Maybe he's the kind of player who doesn't have enough talent to play in the Major League Baseball, but he could be the kind of player who can impact and play Lidon every day. And Rainer Nunez was like the best first baseman available, and they got it. So they do a really good draft. Saying that Gigantes, like being in one of the last spots and drafted very good players. So I would say, like, of course, Toros drafted really well, Toros and Leones. But I would say like Toros, Leones, and Águilas did a really good job. And if I have to pick one of those, I would say, or at least, I like what Águilas did. Like that's what I think. Let's put this. This is the first tier. Like Águilas, Escogido, and Toros. Then we have the Licey, which drafted really good players, like in terms of, I don't know, future war, let's put it that way. Maybe the highest amount of talent, but I don't know how many of those players are going to play on Lidon. And then we have Estrellas and Gigantes, who didn't draft it like the same level of talent like Toros, Escogido, and Águilas, but thinking about the order, they was the two last teams to draft in every round, and I think they did their work. But if I have to pick one thing, I think Águilas drafted better, and that's all for today. One last thing: teams were supposed today to begin the preseason, the trainings, but like Hurricane Fiona is make landfall in the Dominican Republic, and they move it to later this week, like all the things. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, listening, and supporting the podcast. And I hope to see you in another opportunity. Have a good one.